Do you tweet this out?
I'm sorry. Say again.
Do you tweet this out,
Yeah, I'll tweet
or
it
do you
out. Of course,
have you?
my Twitter got nuked, so now I'm on my alt, which I only have like 120 followers anymore. So, um, but that's all right. Yeah. Well,
I saw that you called somebody
a
a flame
flaming
effect.
faggot.
Yeah, I watched it and then I clicked on it and I was like, this user has been suspended. I was like, yep, I watched that happen a million times.
It was
You
like,
can
all
eat a
right.
dick.
Well, exactly. I was just like, fuck it.
Oh,
If I'm gonna
that's
bomb
funny.
on somebody, it's gonna be one of these fucking dicks.
I mean, one of the things to remember is the juice worth the squeeze? How useful is it really?
Yeah. Well, Twitter was never. I never found Twitter extremely useful anyway. I always just found it entertaining. So it didn't really bother me that much. I was like, all right, whatever.
I've been able to meet some people on there so that I can hopefully try to get, more productive things accomplished. So that's been useful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna intro you in, man, and we're gonna get rolling.
10-4,
All right.
do it up, son. All right.
I'm I'm here with a fellow Texan running for the Texas House of Representatives, Josh Hamm, and we met at Renegade University weekend up in Lockhart at Buck's house. So, what is going on, man?
Not much. Basically, I'm mad as hell and I won't take it anymore.
Yeah,
They have successfully pissed me off enough by coming after my children, and,
yeah,
and I don't find that acceptable.
yeah,
If government is to have any purpose at all, it must be to defend the rights of citizens, right? Like you don't get anything else unless that most basic fundamental principle is fulfilled, and they're failing at it. So kick the bums out, get new ones in.
Well, you touch on something like right. I mean, like right off the bat, you're touching on something that I've been saying for a while. My kids are older, so now I do have a granddaughter who's two, but my kids are older, and so I'm kind of saved from the parenting side of things, and I'm thankful for that. They
So your overt hostility is less, but you still recognize the problem.
yes, yeah, because I've been saying for a long time, I'm glad I'm not raising kids right now. I'm glad my kids are grown, and I mean, my youngest kids are still in high school, but they're graduating over the next couple of years. So it's like, all right, like you're basically grown, you
Yeah.
know.
By the time they hit 14 or 15, really, they're your molding is complete
Right,
as much as you're going to be able to do.
exactly. And so I'm very much thankful that I'm not dealing with this from a parental standpoint, but I am looking at it as a grandparent now and going, okay, like what do I think about everything that's going on? And it does drive me crazy. Sometimes I feel like my grandma, and I'm like, oh my god, you know, it's like it's weird because I'm just it things you don't realize until you're older how much things change from the time that you're young. When you're young and everybody's like, well, back in my day, blah blah blah, you're like rolling your eyes and shrugging your shoulders. And then when you get older, you're like, oh, I see what the deal is. I see what's going on
Well,
here.
right, because history doesn't start for most people until they turn 15.
Right.
That's when reality starts, and then everything before that is ancient history, and so they're not paying any attention. You want to sit there and do a little bit of a mind fuck on yourself. This is something I have to think about. Was the moral majority wrong about anything? I'm sure there were things they were wrong about. Don't get me wrong, but I was passionate in my hatred of the quote unquote authoritarian moral majority. And now I look back and I go, were they wrong? did not everything they say was going to happen? Isn't that in the process of happening right now, where we see societal collapse? We see, people talking about pedophilia and wanting to normalize it. We see bestiality wanting to be normalized. We see, crime just increasing rampantly. That doesn't mean that they were correct in their prescriptions of everything, but and to be fair, part of it is just because I harbored resentment towards them. Like, how dare you, try to restrict my ability to be able to listen to music that I want to listen to. But now, being that dad, I got to kind of look at it and go, there may have been something that those, old white ladies were talking about that has validity. And maybe we need to really reanalyze society a little bit and what is acceptable from a societal standpoint if we're going to continue to be a free society wherein our children can actually grow and prosper.
Well,
Hedonism
I
isn't
must have. I was going to say I must have skipped over this rule before we started podcasting, because one of my rules is you can never advocate white women.
I can never do what?
Advocate for the positions of white women.
Oh, that's fine.
No, it's a joke. Because white
Okay.
women must be stopped.
I mean, yes, but
I'm just fucking around, dude.
but it's kind of like this is my position isn't necessarily that they were right or wrong, but my position is people, because like I graduated in 2002, right? I joined the Army right after 9/11, et cetera,
Right.
et cetera. And so, the people, what was formative in my youth was George Carlin, Dave Chappelle, ICP, Marilyn Manson, like just renegades, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so I was righteously upset at the moral majority, trying to control things. And now I'm the dad, and I'm looking back and I'm like, that slippery slope thing that I thought was complete bullshit sure looks like we're sliding here.
Yeah.
Fast.
Right. Well, all right. Well, let's back up just a little bit. Let's first talk about like who you are. Let's get into that. Who is Joshua Hamm? Most people have never heard of you. Who are you?
Well, the reason most people haven't heard of me is because I'm just a blue collar dude. I'm a veteran. I deployed to Iraq. I got injured in Afghanistan. I am also just a blue collar guy. I'm a diesel mechanic. I'm a truck driver, or was a truck driver. I used to work in the oil field doing fracking. I've worked in construction. I've even been a tow truck driver. So the majority of my work was blue collar work. And I'm quite proud of the fact that I made more as a blue collar guy than most people with a college degree ever do, because I was willing to work hard. The oil field, I was working 100 hours a week or more.
Right.
And it's frustrating that the people who are supposed to be our leaders, or who are supposed to be in charge or anything, have failed so horribly at the most basic principles. And so, like, I never wanted to do this. I never wanted to be here. This is not something I want to do. I would much rather be chilling with my kids like I did 5 years ago. They've just screwed with me enough that I feel as though I have no choice. Like, there's a time and period in which everybody starts out with, I can't do this because I have children. And at some point, you hit a threshold where you go, I must do this because I have children. And that's where I'm at.
So we've kind of talked about why you're running to an extent, but talk about who you're running against and the influence that had on you throwing your hat in the ring, because it seems like that had a lot to do with you getting involved here and
Sure,
decided you wanted to run.
Right. So initially I was just going to try to become awake, become alert, become aware, and, start getting active locally. And I did, joining local groups, building community, trying to become more involved. And as I did so, I said, I'm uniquely, or not entirely uniquely, but I am gifted with the ability to speak and to be willing and able to speak to large groups. And a lot of people don't have that desire or capacity, one of the two. And so local people that I was working with, the Tea Party groups, Patriot groups, were like, hey, we really need somebody to run in House District 12 against Kyle Cassell. He is the most liberal person in the Texas Republican House. We need him gone. He's not representing us. He's not doing a good job. He's just a rhino. We need somebody good to go in there and basically begin kicking stuff down and turning tables and taking a whip to them to bring back some ancient. And so that's what I was like, you know what? If this is what you guys say that you want me to do, then that's what I'll do. And so I've begun researching his record and everything. And it's like, he's not out there calling for a fourth special session to have legislative protection for Texans against mandates. That's a problem. We don't want executive orders. We want legislation. We want things done properly. And you're not calling for it. We have books in schools right now that are effectively child pornography. They are so graphic. That's unacceptable. And either you're either complicit or you're a fool, because it's been in the news. It's been being talked about among patriots and on the right side, where they're like, hey, look at this book and look at the
Can you give an example? I'm not familiar with these stories.
All Boys Aren't Blue. The book is called All Boys Aren't Blue, and it was a winner of Teen Vogue. And it is. I have found it in libraries, both public, found it in public libraries in the teen section.
Mm-hmm.
And it specifically talks about minors engaging in sexual activities in a very explicit manner.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking it up now, so I have kind of an idea, because I've never heard of this.
Absolutely. Right. And it's not reasonable to assume that everybody knows everything that's going on. But if you're an elected official, and then you need to know what's going on, that's kind of your gig. Right. And even beyond that, what did you do to fight my children being kicked out of school for a year? What did you do to fight, these wannabe tyrants trying to muzzle my children? You didn't. So at best, you're incompetent. We don't need incompetence.
Okay.
All boys aren't blue.
Yeah, no, I'm reading the description, man. I'm sorry. I'm listening to you, and you're right. We don't need incompetence. Well, I'm doing both things at one time.
Oh yeah, no worries. I could have told you about it in advance, but kind of, we're doing this live, baby.
Yeah, it says reading age 14 to 18, 10 grade levels 10 to 12. So,
right.
All right.
And
so
yet,
prominent journalist, activist.
The material in there is so sexual explicit that when parents were reading it at school board meetings, they were shutting off the parents' mics, they were shutting off the video cameras, and they said that it would not pass FCC regulations.
Really?
That's how explicit it is. Yes.
So this is part of a series too. This isn't this isn't a one-off book. This is part of a series this guy wrote.
Right. You also have Anti-Racist Baby. That's being peddled in schools and in libraries.
George M. Johnson. Let's see if I can find this series, because it said it won all kinds of Amazon awards too. So We Are Not Broken. Looks like those are the only two books right now. What is We Are Not Broken? I'm not sure what this is. Have you heard of this one?
No, I haven't heard of that one.
Okay. So this is a memoir written after All Boys Aren't Blue. It doesn't really give me much of a description. That's pretty much all it says. A vibrant story of George, Garrett, Raul, and Rasul, 4 children raised by Nanny, their fiercely devoted grandmother. The boys hold one another close through early brushes with racism, memorable experiences at the family barbershop, and first loves and losses. Huh. Okay. So it's like sounds like it's about their relationship with their grandmother more than anything.
Oh,
It
I'm
keeps going.
betting that last sentence right there, where it talks about their first experiences with loves. Yeah, if you wanted to sit there and be able to sneak in incredibly explicit material, you don't want that on the back cover.
Right.
You want that in the words.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also like I don't know. It's a black guy with a black guy on the front, and barbershops are mentioned. So it's like okay, like how stereotypical are we going to go get? Um, on this,
Yeah,
aspect. It's just kind of strange the way that it's written. Um, I don't, but I don't know anything about this author, so I don't know. I'll take your word for it on the All Boys Aren't Blue, and I'll look into some videos on that. I'm not aware of that book, but I'm not saying you're lying. I mean, I can
right,
imagine. I can imagine. I've seen like drag queen story hour and things like that. We know these things are happening, so it's not something that
right,
catches me off guard as much as I'm just not familiar with that particular book. So,
right. And it's only useful as an example because it is a thing that exists in libraries. It is an attempt at normalization
mm,
of making children sexual, and that's not okay.
yeah,
Like, it's just
one
not. You
one of the
you, you need to
stories,
have
one of the
boundaries.
one of the stories I've told was when my eldest son was about 15 years old. He came home and he told me that he's pansexual. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean you're pansexual? And so he explains to me what it means. And I'm like, dude, you're 15. You don't know what you are. Just
Yeah,
stop. Like, why is this even a thing? Like, whenever I was 15, that was not what I was talking about. I wasn't trying to figure out what gender I was or, you know, all these sexual normative like ideas and ideologies. I was just like, yeah, like, whatever.
yeah.
Like, I'm attracted to this
But
person or whatever.
yeah, but if you sit there and you let me hold you for 9 hours a day in a box, and I get to propagandize to you without any oversight at all, I can convince you of anything.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, you don't have to tell me. I've read John Taylor Gatto. Like I've been against the 15,000 hours of fucking government schooling forever. So like
Mhm.
it's just okay. But I just look at it like when that was the first time I realized it was a thing. I'd heard these conversations had online, and I was just like, why are people talking about this stuff? It makes no sense. And then my son comes
Nobody
home and
cares.
yeah, my son comes home and he's 15 and he tells me I'm pansexual. And I'm like, shut up, dude. You don't know what the hell you are. I mean, that was
Right.
exactly what I told him, too. Like, I was like,
Well, yeah, because realistically, again, growing up in the 90s and the 2000s, like we would have we looked on transgender people or transsexual people the exact same way that we looked upon the guy in the Uncle Sam outfit wearing stilts.
yeah,
They're weird, but we don't care.
yeah,
Like, you can do whatever the hell you want. You can walk around with stilts and honk your nose. I don't give a crap. But if you're going to sit there and try to sexualize my children and propagandize them, well, now we have a problem. These two
right.
things aren't the same thing. Right.
Yes.
And so when it was just Eddie Izzard and a couple of people, and they weren't trying to fundamentally transform education for children, we're talking about two different things now.
Right.
One's a political ideology, one is an individual expression.
Mm. Yeah. When it's on the individual level, it's not a threat to your home life or your family life or anything like that. But when it becomes a religion, as we're seeing with the Church of Woke, it is absolutely everywhere. There's nowhere you can go that it hasn't penetrated and become part of the culture. And you're like, I don't know. I look around and I'm like, I don't understand what these people are doing half the time, you know, and just to see them shove this stuff down children's throats, it's disgusting in a lot of ways. So I agree with you. And so
Oh,
that, I mean, and that's absolutely a good reason to get involved politically. That, I mean, if there is a good reason, something like that is a good reason. Now, when it comes to this, I don't know how to say his last name. I read your
Cassell.
Casal. Okay. When it comes to him, now, is he for this stuff, or does he just kind of keep his mouth shut and, tuck his tail and hide, or
In
how?
gen- in general, he's just weak, but he did vote against the bathroom bill that would have protected students in Texas from this exact same thing that happened to that child in Loudoun County, Virginia.
Mm.
He voted against protecting girls here. I have a problem with that.
So this would be a bill that said that transgender boys that identify as girls could use a girl's bathroom. Basically, is that basically the
Right.
general
It
concept?
was hey, genitalia determines which bathroom you go to,
Mm.
not what you personally choose.
Right. And
So
he decided like you get to choose.
right. He
Yeah.
voted against protecting our daughters, and I have a
Right.
problem with that.
Yeah. Well, and
You know,
that's one of the things I've always said that could easily be an issue because I'm certain my my wife has been in a bathroom with a transgender before and not even known it. And so these aren't the people that we're talking about. We're not talking about the people that live their entire lives as a woman and nobody like suspects otherwise. You know, it's the people that are preaching this
gaming the system.
gospel. Right.
They're gaming the system.
They're preaching this gospel and they're using this as a way to perpetuate their predator nature. And
Yes.
and so that is definitely an issue because prior to the entire bathroom bill being brought up in public, never once had I ever heard of a situation where somebody that identified as a man or a woman went into a bathroom and had an issue. Never once have I ever heard of it. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying I never heard of it.
Right.
And it wasn't an issue until politically it was an issue. And then it's everybody's issue. And it's like, wait, why is this a problem? Where is this coming from?
Well, and a large part of it is coming from this a the communists really work to use your values against you. So whether you're Christian or whether you're libertarian, and even most conservatives, right? Like we really do believe in acceptance and intolerance. There may be specific things we're intolerant of, but even then, most of us are really laissez-faire, like live and let live. What you do in your house is your business as long as you're not affecting me in my house, right?
Hmm.
And that's generally how we are. And so because the left's modus operandi is power, they will use whatever tools required to achieve that power.
Hmm.
And that includes weaponizing your virtues and values against you. And so they'll say, well, why can't you be accepting of a 14-year-old boy who failed out on the men's track team joining the girls' track team because now he feels like a girl and winning states and taking away the opportunity for any of those girls to be able to, have a scholarship? Why aren't you accepting of that? And the proper answer is because he's a boy. And so he needs to be challenged by his peers and not because he's a loser simply play a different game. That's not how this works. You don't get to redefine reality just because you don't like the results. And that's what they do. And they prey upon our desire for peace as a vehicle, as a weapon to use against us.
To be
And we
fair,
have to be really vigilant on that.
to be fair to that boy, every time I failed, I felt like a girl too.
Fair enough.
It's like, but that's part of failing, right? It's part of
It is.
part of failing is feeling like less than you are and fucking nutting up and going on about your business, right?
Absolutely.
It either can get better or find something that you're better at. You know,
Yes.
like it's
Choose a better game.
right. Like not everybody's going to be LeBron James. We hear that all the time. You're not going to be if you're 5'8", you're not going to be 6'8" tomorrow. Like it's just not going to happen. You know,
There's only been one person who's less than 5'11" or 6 feet who's been actually successful in the NBA. One. And he was a freak because he had a vertical of like 48 inches or something and could dunk. That little guy who was on the
there were two. There was Spud Webb and there was Muggsy Bogues.
yeah. Okay, sorry, two.
Yeah.
But effectively, we're talking statistically, no, not going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's fine. So recalibrate. Do what you can do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I mean, it may make you feel like less of a man or a weakling or whatever to fail at something that you really wanted to succeed at. But you know what? Like we've all failed.
Life ain't fair.
Every one of us have failed at something. Like I fail at this podcast every single week. You know, like, and
yet here you are, just
and here I am. I'm just gonna keep getting better. So
well, and it's so the first thing is that automatically when I see people who have mental disorders like this, which if you can't fit in anywhere where you are around, like let's start with this. Because I don't think you're that much older than me, and if not, then you'll remember. You remember the wannabe rebels in the 90s and 2000s were the goths and the emos, and they were wearing jean coats and they were pretending like they were Billy Badass, right? And they're jamming out to Dragula and everything.
Right.
No big deal. They weren't really hurting anyone or anything. Sure, they'd smoke a little pot, they dropped some acid or something, but it's not like they were running around like punching grandma on the back of the head. That's not what they were doing.
Right.
They weren't cutting off their genitals and making permanent problems, unless you consider shrooms and some mind altering things to have permanent effects. And they do, but fine. You're allowed to make some mistakes, but you gotta have limits. You really do. Mm-hmm. Especially because the older you get, the more you realize how absolutely retarded you were when you were younger, and were so sure that you knew what was going on, and you look back on it and you go, God, I was stupid.
Yeah. I look back to last year and I'm like, holy shit, man, what did I say? Like, oh God, why
would I do this to myself?
Yeah, sometimes I look back at last week and I'm like, oh my God, I was stupid. Like, it's one of those things. Like, you live, you learn, you gotta, but there's an amount of self-awareness that comes into that.
That comes with time.
You're talking about people. No, even as a kid, I remember being pretty self-conscious and self-aware of like what was going on and learning, like being very aware of advancing and moving forward and learning and getting better at something. Whereas
I'm going to bet though, you're talking a person in your life that showed you how your actions had consequences and tied the two together for you.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Began duplicating it. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I had both my parents.
Yeah.
Like I had both my parents. Like if you really want to look at like what the problem is in society, it's not a political problem. This is a social problem that has been perpetrated upon society since the 60s, right? If not before.
In large part. Yes. In large part by the government.
Right. Yeah. And so you look at that and you're like, oh, okay, well, like maybe from a political standpoint, like some people can put the brakes on and say, okay, we need to slow things down. But ultimately there's got to be a culture shift. And if there's not a culture shift, it's going to get really bad and it's going to keep getting worse. And there's nothing you can
Yes.
do to stop it.
Well, and that's why it's so amusing. For if you follow Twitter, you begin to see these stories about how this Dallas school district put out that they needed males to come and sponsor people, but they didn't have enough dads, and so like 2,000 fathers show up. You see the school out there in Louisiana where the kids are fighting each other, and the dads are like, nope, enough of that, and the patriarchy comes in and enforces order, because that's what the patriarchy does. It enforces order through violence, or at least the threat of violence, which is a different kind of violence. But that's what men do. That's what the patriarchy is. It is order, and which isn't always exactly what you need. It's not perfection, blah, 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 blah. But you do need discipline if you are going to take iron and transform it into steel. It's going to take heat. It's going to take pressure. It's going to take discipline. It's not fun or necessarily comfortable, but that's what's required. And the problem is that we have become so maternalistic as a society that, we eschew pain because we believe that, that feeling good is the greatest of virtues, that being happy is the greatest of virtues. And it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Honor, duty, courage. These are the things upon which actual life is built. Life is not built upon, a feeling of happiness. Joy is not the same as happiness either. But, this concept of we're going to infantilize people and wrap them in bubble wrap and protect them and save them from themselves, from their consequences, from reactions, etc., is destroying this country.
Right. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
that's one of those politically incorrect things that most people either are unaware of or just simply don't have the balls to say out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
You
and
need balance.
so you got this guy that you're running against. Now, how long's he been in office?
2012, I think.
And what is it?
I think
What do you think it is that keeps attracting people to him?
quite honestly, he hasn't had challenges.
Okay.
That's what it is. Most people aren't willing to step up against the incumbent. The deck is completely stacked against you if there's an incumbent. And most people, like me, a year ago, were fairly asleep at the wheel. Like, hey, if life is pretty decent, I'm gonna just keep doing my own thing, because on the right, what we define as winning is the fact that we have wives and husbands, we have children, we're able to provide for our families, we're instilling our virtues and our values in them. Like, domestic is our game. And if we're winning at that, we're winning at life, right? Well, the problem is that we on the right, we're so involved in playing our game that we didn't pay any attention to what was actually happening outside of our domestic affairs. And so more and more we've seen, liberties get stripped. We've seen our rights be taken away from us, or restricted, or rescinded, or however you want to call it. And that's because we just weren't paying attention. And that can only change by having people on the right who actually go, okay, we believe that service is a virtue, so we need to actually step up and serve. And it has to be larger than just my family. I have to defend my community. I have to defend, the people around me. I have to defend my family. And I have to do it by stepping up into a larger role. It may not be what I want to do, but service isn't about comfort.
Right. Well, and one of the things you and I had talked about on the phone the other day was that I'm more interested in the local elections, right? And the towns, the mayors, those types of things. And so you're running for the state. What do you what is there to be accomplished at the state level because I really think that when it comes to stopping tyranny, it's going to happen at a very local level. It's going to be mayors and sheriffs and these
Hmm.
people that are involved
Yeah,
in actually stopping tyranny um, against those people in their communities. So at a state level,
I
what is
agree.
it that you can accomplish?
So before I answer your question, let me pull a politician move here. Before I answer your question, let me just say I 100% agree. Like when I go to the local Libertarian Party meeting and when I talk to them, I'm like, guys, run for sheriff, run for city councilor, run for mayor. You know, all of these races are not non-denominational. What is it when it's non quote unquote not political, but still is? Um, you don't have the albatross of an L around your name, so you can just run on your ideas, and people will vote for you, and then you can begin to build credibility within the community about who you are, what your ideas are, show them it works, show them how you are benefiting them, and you'll be able to gain more power to help free more people. I don't know why I can't get people to do it. And part of my goal in running for state is to give cover for the people in my district to exert more autonomy at their own local levels, to encourage veterans and parents to step up and start kicking these establishment people out because they suck. Get them out of there. Stop giving any sort of this thin veneer, this facade of credibility that they've milked for all it's worth. Stop it. Take it away from them. Do not comply. Become ungovernable, right? But there are things that can be done at the state level. There is state legislation that can be enacted wherein, hey, the state of Texas no longer recognizes the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Your warrants, you don't get to serve warrants in Texas. You can deliver your warrants to us, and we will go and serve them, or sheriffs can and will do that. The sheriff is a state office as well, right? We're not gonna, we're going to abolish property taxes in the state of Texas. I've got quite a few people who are on the insurgent right who are going to work together to abolish property taxes. That's a big deal, and that's something that we could get done if we have enough, people who are in agreement. Because the wishy-washy people are always going to be wishy-washy. The 5 to 10% of leaders are the ones who make things happen. It's not the squishy middle. Abolishing property taxes would be a big deal. Trying to dismantle the state's Department of Education, get rid of it. Make all education local. Tell local municipalities that they are responsible for their education. You guys get to hire teachers. You get to choose the curriculum. You get to decide what you want to do. I don't care if you want to do a schoolhouse like they did in 1836, Little House on the Prairie. Do that. Figure it out.
How would that fight go? Because I know there's the federal side of education too that you would
Oh,
have
sure.
to
You
do
just
that.
don't accept any of the funds because see, all the way federal works is that federal takes money from us, and then they wash it through all of their different avenues, and then they'll send like 30 cents back on every dollar they take in. But that dollar goes back to the state, or that 30 cents goes back to the state, and then the state allocates it out. So just don't do it. That's it. You don't accept their money. You don't accept the funds. You don't accept their. I mean, we did it with the Medicare and Medicaid expansion.
Yeah.
We didn't take the money because we didn't want the strings. There's no such thing as free chicken ever. That applies federally and that applies to the states. The only way that you're going to have freedom of education for students is if you get the state out of it. And it's going to suck. It's going to be harsh.
So
But
what
as fast as this ideological war is accelerating, we need to move and be serious about it.
Well, I think you're right. I don't see anything that I really disagree with you on. You're saying all the things that I've been kind of thinking and contemplating over the last, year or whatever. So I don't see any points of disagreement really. Um, what do you think there is for how do you spread the message? How do you get your name out there? How do you get people recognizing you versus the incumbent?
Basically, I don't have money, so I'm gonna be knocking on people's doors. That's how I'm gonna do it. I meet with local patriot groups. I'm gonna meet with more of them because my district is 4 or 5 different counties. I'm just gonna go and talk to people, and the 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 people who are gonna vote. So the only election that matters is the primary. The district is like R plus 20 or 24 or something like that.
Mm.
So like the Republican is going to win the general. So the only election that matters is the primary. And your primary voters are the ones who tend to be most conservative and tend to be most angry at the status quo. And so I just need to reach them and show them that who I am, what I believe, and that I represent the way a lot of them feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because the current GOP, as it's becoming, this isn't, this ain't your daddy's GOP. This isn't the same grand old party from 2002 that was all about war.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the same GOP from 1995 that was all about, sucking up to big business and tax breaks for corporations.
Right.
That is not the same people who are there now. The insurgent populace, it's the same. What we're seeing is simply another new cycle of the Tea Party. You had the Tea Party back in 2007, 2008,
Yeah, somewhere
and they
around there.
got kind of subsumed and disintegrated. And then they came back, and then they got subsumed, and then they came back under Trump with the MAGA stuff, and then they got subsumed, and now you're seeing them again under the America First banner. But they're not going away. And every single time, it takes time to eat through a decrepit, corrupt, entrenched establishment. But we're getting there. We're slowly getting out. Like Matt Gaetz or Marjorie Taylor Greene being a vocal person that the GOP base listens to 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got Tucker Carlson out there talking about no new wars.
Yeah.
Praise God. I don't know how it happened, but my boys have become anti-war and pro-free speech. It's like, yes, finally, I know that I can go into and talk to your average GOP person, and I could talk to them about abolishing the FBI. And for everybody under 50, they're like, okay, got it. We've seen what they've done. For people over 50, I would need to sit there and convince them through facts and reason and logic. And I'd have to be like, hey, do you trust the people who tell you that Hillary Clinton did nothing wrong? Do you trust them? Do you trust the DOJ, who was sitting there and imprisoning all of these people from January 6th? Do you trust the IRS? Which state institution do you trust to actually be able to impart justice? And if the answer is none, then maybe you need to reevaluate where you stand with these storied institutions that aren't what we thought they were. They have become corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you can have that conversation without screeching about being blood-soaked monsters, then there are people who would listen. Kyle Rittenhouse really woke up a lot of people where they were like, this is absolutely horrific. We're seeing cops lying on the stand. We're seeing falsification and fabrication of evidence. We're seeing the prosecutor, it looks like, intentionally trying to tank this case so that he can get a mistrial, so he can try and take it again. Like, this looks bad. And it doesn't take long for people who see that to go, I don't trust the state. Yeah. And you shouldn't.
Yeah, I just had Legal Man on to talk about that case, and one of the things he said that I thought was so impactful was for every Rittenhouse case, there's hundreds of other cases that are even worse.
Right. And what are the chances that little old you, if you got on the wrong side of a DA or a cop, if they were willing to lie about you, and there's no evidence they're not. I mean, did you see who the presiding judge in the Ghislaine Maxwell case is?
No, I didn't see that yet. No.
It's James Comey's daughter.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm not even making it up, dude. I can't make it up. It's the most ridiculous shit you've ever heard in your life.
Yeah.
And you want me to trust that justice system?
Yeah.
You mean the same Supreme Court whose sole, and this is the thing, is conservatives have a much better understanding of what the branches of government are, what they're supposed to do, what their inherent roles are, etc. Right? So you want me to trust the Supreme Court, the same people who are their primary function is to be a mediator of dispute amongst the states. And when Texas brings a suit with 23 other states, the Supreme Court says, "No, dog, I don't want to touch that. That doesn't look like something we should do. You don't have standing." Haha, gotcha. People who are conservative saw that.
Yeah.
They paid attention. Do you think that increased the credibility of the federal government, the Supreme Court? Then it's easy to sit there and go, yeah, the same Supreme Court who did that is the same one that threw Dred Scott back in jail.
Right.
They're just men. And bad, corrupt men at that.
You look like you had something to say a while ago before I got that question out. Do you remember what it was?
Nope.
No. Oh, okay.
Nope. It's the problem with brain damage, my man.
Yeah, I'll feel you. Well, you had a bigger kind of message that you're trying to get across, which I think is probably one of the more important messages of yours, about not being afraid to take these people on.
Yes.
And I think if nothing else comes out of this, if that message is to get across and more people are to do what you're doing and to take on the responsibility of fighting back, and just average people running for these offices, then you will see significant changes.
Absolutely. And that's a big part of the reason why I'm running. Obviously, I'm running because I think I can win. I know how to speak reasonably well. I'm blessed in that here in Texas, at least, being a veteran, especially a veteran who's combat wounded, gives me a lot of credibility that I would not otherwise have earned, only being 37. It just does. You don't have to like it. It is what it is. People look kindly upon that around these parts. What is it? Somewhere between 30 to 40% of the United States Army is made up of Texans alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're a big contributor. And so public service is a big deal to conservatives, and military is one that is particularly honored. And I know how to speak reasonably well, which helps. But the main goal is, like, I'm just a diesel mechanic / trucker / blue collar worker. If I can do this, there's no reason that you can't also, Mr. Veteran, Mr. Parent, Mr. Blue collar worker. Like, you don't necessarily have to go for as high, but why can't you run for mayor? What's your excuse? Because whatever your excuse is, I have at least the same excuse, if not better. I have brain damage. It hurts for me to freaking walk because my knees are destroyed. I got a 17-month-old, so don't talk to me about how your kids won't let you do it. I've got a 13-year-old, so don't tell me about how your kids are too old or what. Like, I don't make a lot of money. I live off of my disability. Like, whatever your excuse may be, I will shoot it down. So really the only question is, do you have the balls to do it? Do you have the desire to serve? That's the only question that really matters. And hopefully we can find more people who have served in the past and are willing to serve again. Granted, it's in a thankless position. I don't want to do this. Most of them don't either. But that's who we need.
So when you're as you're ramping up, I mean, when does the election season officially start? It's after December 13th.
Oh, it's already.
Right?
Well, so November 13th through December 13th is when people can file to run.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say it's already started 1 to 2 months ago at least.
Yeah. And
so
are you even on the radar yet? Have they even acknowledged that you're running yet?
Oh, my opponent won't acknowledge me. Absolutely not.
Okay.
He's got $500,000 in the bank, and he's hoping he can just skate through on his name recognition. And to be fair, it's honestly, it's better for me the longer he remains silent, because
that's
kind of
what I was thinking.
The flip side is the local Chamber of Commerce and everything puts on debates, and so if they put on debates, will he show up? If it's organized by the local GOP or whatever else, is he going to show up? And if he doesn't, it looks bad on him. If he does, I'm going to absolutely smash him about traditional conservative thing. I'm going to attack him from the right, because you attack the left from the left and you attack the right from the right. And that's what I'm going to do. And quite frankly, this is an R+20 or 22, I think, district. It means that we have way more Republicans than we do Democrats in the district.
Right.
Right. And so I think that in this time, people aren't looking for lukewarm. I don't think they're looking for weak people to just kind of be yes men and to, talk out the sides of their mouth. No, I think people are looking for fighters. I think people are looking for firebrands. I think they want people to plant flags and take land. I don't think my opponent is that kind of person or has the capacity to be that type of person.
Yeah.
I can be a bit hostile from time to time.
That's all right. That's why we love you.
Basically, there's few things in life that are.
But that really just shows your
lukewarm eggs.
Yeah, that shows you're a fighter. I mean, that's not a bad thing. I mean, you may have to learn to temper certain things, but honestly, people don't want. I mean, you said it a while ago, and it reminded me of that quote from the Bible that you were neither hot nor cold, so I spit you from my mouth. I don't want anything to do with you. You're not refreshing in any way. So it's kind of that thing that you might come off. You're going to come off hot. I get it, but I like that about you, and I know that you're fired up and you're amped up. I'm wondering what kind of battle are you looking at though? Like, how hard is it going to be for you to make a significant difference in this race?
Well, so basically, last election that he had a challenger, which was 6 or 8 years ago, the total number of ballots cast was somewhere around 20,000 votes. So basically, if I can go and knock on doors and talk to 5,000 people, then I'll probably have it. It's really that simple. Just keep knocking on doors, keep talking to people, and letting them know what's going on. Miss Cotta. Sorry, pick up my daughter.
That's all right. Is she all done?
Yeah, she's done. It's fine. She can sit for a while.
All right. Cool.
Come on. What's tonight? Sunday? Tomorrow is school night.
Yeah, we're just under an hour, but we can stop right now if you want to. I mean, I pretty much got everything in. Why don't you give us anything that you feel like you haven't gotten to say? Make sure that you give all your plugs and websites and all that, and I'll put all that in the show notes, and we'll close it down.
Yeah, JoshuaHamm.com. Come support me. I'm serious. I'm a blue collar guy. I don't have a whole lot of money. And so if you want to see, are you more proud than you want to? Children have a better chance now than they did 2 years ago. And if the answer is no, then the way you change that is by changing the people who are actually making things happen. You're going to have to get people out there to just kick down tires and knock over ants' nests and just start setting fire to these things that are currently, entrapping you and your children. It's going to be ugly. But realistically, if you're not getting called a racist and a transphobe, then you're not being productive at all. You're just, at best, on the sidelines watching as the culture war is playing around. And then you are going to end up getting caught up in the repercussions of it, but you won't have done anything to actually affect the change. That's like the worst of both worlds, right?
Yeah.
So, if you want to try to bring about liberty, the first thing to understand is most people don't want liberty. They want security. Point blank. If that wasn't true, then the Libertarian Party would be greater than 5% over the last 50 years. And I mean that in no way disrespectfully. There's a lot of libertarians I love, a lot of the planks I agree with, etc. The problem is marketing. And trust me, the Republicans suck at marketing too. They really do. The best example is school choice. When I say school choice, maybe for people who really believe strongly about liberty, then they'll get a little flutter with it. I say that, whoa, can you hear me?
Yeah.
It disconnected for just a second.
Yeah,
But
it did make a funny noise there for a minute, but I was like, what the hell?
But if I say that we need to protect children from violence and government, I'm trying to get my head's up. What's in there? Yes. But if I say, hey, we really need to protect children from government propaganda and violence in government schools, and would you help me to protect children in that regard? Well, all of a sudden, although I'm still talking about school choice, we've changed the dynamic of the conversation dramatically. And a lot of that just has to do with understanding human beings and working with them where they are. And so a good leader who believes in liberty would be using security to sell liberty, because security is what people buy. Politics is sales and marketing for power. Understand that, acknowledge it, accept it, and simply try to actually go about providing liberty by selling security. It sounds bad, and there's going to be people who go, oh, you're being dishonest, and that's not intellectually pure, and blah, 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 blah. What matters more, increasing liberty or whatever it is that you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
You're exactly right. And that's like a big, I'm sure you've seen the arguments. This is the big thing that's been going on here recently, in the liberty movement, with those that are being labeled as post-libertarians and libertarians. And, I know you've been talking to like Andrew and some of these guys.
Yeah.
So I know we have a lot of common connections. And again, we've spent some time together. You're one of the voices that could be heard on my podcast when I was interviewing Matt Erickson and Buck Johnson, and so yeah. you're one of the crowd of three that stuck around there.
Yeah, and I was saying some of the same stuff then too.
Yeah, you were.
My thoughts haven't changed just because I filed to run.
Right,
and if it ends up that people don't want a fighter and they want to just go along to get along, well, then that's what they'll get. If you want change, then you're going to have to actively help me to implement change. And that doesn't mean that my ideas are necessarily the best. It doesn't mean that I'm not open to suggestions to try to, figure out better ways. But I can guarantee the people that are there now suck.
Right. Yeah.
Figure it out, man.
Well, the people that are there,
I don't know what to tell you.
the one thing for sure is the people that are there for themselves, and that's
Yes.
the one thing that's certain is they're there for their own profit, their own wealth, power, and influence, and whereas you have concerns that are generational, which I think is really respectful, and it would cause me to be in your corner much more so than any of these other guys' corners.
Well, and realistically, I have already proved my mettle as a man. I've been to war. I've done that stuff. So like, I don't need medals. I don't need accommodations or recommendations or any of that. I don't need pretty words written in paper. I don't need any of that stuff.
Right.
I have proven myself and become the steel. And so now I can use my steel to actually enact the virtues that are important.
Right.
And the problem is most people haven't become the men that they need to be and the women that they need to be to actually enforce the discipline that is required to get those virtues to move on.
Yeah.
Entropy is a thing that is always going to be attempting to tear down everything around you. So it's going to take effort, actual real effort, to combat entropy, let alone build order.
Yeah.
And you can't have peace without order. You just can't.
Give us your website again. Make sure people know where to find you.
Yeah, my website is joshuaham.com, and I'll text you a link to that. And I had a column done about, not a column, I don't know, a write-up done about me by Andrew Kitchen at the Texas Scorecard, I believe it was. I can send you that as well.
Yeah, I have both of those links, so I'll put those definitely in the show notes. You had texted them to me the other day.
Perfect.
Yeah, and so what I want to do,
awesome.
when is the election? That'll be next November, right?
March 1st. The general election is November, yes. The primary election is March.
Okay, so let's touch base right around let's say the end of February. Let's get you back on here and see how your prospects are looking, and then we'll work it from there and see how everything goes.
Awesome. And hopefully by then I'll have news from the YAL, the Young Americans for Liberty, which I know you may know some of them.
I know some people that can get you in touch with them. So like,
I've already submitted the survey. They've reached out to me on Twitter because apparently I've said some things they like, and we'll see where this goes. But
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I got my YAL pin in earlier.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. I'm not involved with them, but I do know people that are. So like, worst come to worst, I get you in touch with those people. But that's about all I could do.
Yeah.
So
I'm already in touch just due to doing stuff.
Good.
If nothing else, like it sounds so trite, but like just showing up, almost nobody does it. So if you actually show up and you start doing things, you will be noticed, you will be recognized, and you'll begin to advance and move up and be able to actually accomplish things.
Right.
It's not that hard.
Yeah, that's like half the battle is just showing up.
It really is. Like, you got a few minutes for story time with Josh? I'll tell you a story real quick.
Go for it, dude.
All right. So I'm working with the Young Republicans, and we're on the phone call. And somehow, somewhere, what comes down the pipe is, hey, should the Young Republicans support increasing the duration of the legislative session by 30 days, going from 90 to 120 days in for the general session? And a couple of people were like, yes. And I was like, no. And then I proceeded to give them an argument that A, the Republicans may not always be in charge, and B, the problem isn't isn't time. They could get things through if they actually cared about them. That's not the deal. This is just more time for them to sit there and work with lobbyists and to do all kinds of backroom deals and all this BS that actually isn't going to benefit people, right? And so I was able to get enough people to work with me so that we voted down so the young Republicans would not support increasing the legislative session. Now, does that vote in and of itself actually matter? Maybe. Because how much do you want to bet that there were a couple of legislators who talked to a couple of different groups to find out if they could get support from, say, 3 or 4 quote unquote right-leaning groups? Hey, we've got this group and this group and this group and this group, and they're all in favor of increasing the legislative session by 30 days. And so now we're going to submit a bill for it, showing that we have support from these groups. And then we're just going to try to just steamroll it right through.
Mm.
So does that mean that I personally stopped that from happening? No, I'm not saying that at all. Is it possible that what I did helped to make sure that tyranny did not increase? Yes, it is possible that that is what happened. Mm-hmm. And there's no way of me knowing at all. I don't take credit or claim credit for it.
Right.
I'm not trying to, sound like that. All I'm trying to say is one person being on a phone call, able to make rhetorical arguments that were, emotionally appealing to the people on the phone call, might have just saved us hundreds of millions of dollars and more legislative oversight, blah, 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 blah. And it was just one dude on a phone call.
Right.
It might have been nothing. It might have been nothing at all. And in that case, did I waste my time on a phone call? No. We did other stuff that was useful.
Yeah.
But it might have. And so become involved, do things, because I'm just a normal guy. You could have just as easily been on that call if you would have started getting involved, if you would have met your local people, if you would have started the process.
Mm.
I'm not special. You can do everything I'm doing.
Right. Yep. Well, that's a good place to cut it off right there, man. So,
all right, brother.
JoshuaHamm.com.
Yes, sir.
All right.
You got it, Mr. Sammons.
All right, buddy. We'll talk later. You enjoy the rest of your night with your dog.
I can't. I did it with my left hand. It's not right. All right. You have a great one, Tommy. I'll talk to you later.
You want to be a hero. Said you're just a slave. All your good intentions took you to your grave. Your pride is how they killed you. With the flag you wave just like a fool. They promised you a mountain, gifted you a stone. They demanded that you throw it into your neighbor's home, and then seize all that they worked for and give it to the throne just like a tool. Well, as we all just stand in line and glorify new ways of being cruel, it seems to me humanity is not something that they're teaching us in school. They dumbs down all around, propaganda, their pollution. They set a cage up on the stage, a facade for all solution. They build a wall, block them all from this mental institution. It's insane. Now they're writing their own rule books and they're crossing all their T's. They're fashioning their people to all wear beggars' knees. If you want a clean drink of water, well, you must say pretty please. It's all a game. As we all just stand in line and justify these crimes done in our names, it seems to me authority and tyranny are both one and the same. Well, it's time to change the channel. It's time to set things right. Make them all stack 'em up like cordwood, watch them sizzle on the flames for good. Well, as we all just stand in line waiting for some kind of Robin Hood, our liberty will never be until our right to freedom is understood.